Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for confirming. My name is Simba. I'll be taking you for this preparation for the assignment for Economic Principles 1. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through the slides. It's not a lot of slides. If you have any question, then you let me know as we proceed. If you want to wait until the last moment when you are done with the presentation, it is still fine as well. Then after that, what we're going to do is we are going to discuss the assignment. So make sure that you have your assignment with you. All right, so I'm just going to go through. I'm sure by now you all know what economics is. So when you talk about economics, we are simply saying economics simply deals with how society tries to address the issue of scarcity. So when you talk about scarcity, we are saying we have limited resources, but our wants are unlimited. So we are going to look at these resources as we proceed. We're going to look at the PPC, which will help us to explain opportunity costs, choice, and scarcity. Then we're also going to look at changes in the PPC. All right, so if you have any questions as we are proceeding, you will just let me know. All right. So the first thing that you're going to look at there is our PPC. So when you look at the PPC, what is important for you is basically to understand the definition. If you understand the definition of a PPC, then it will become easy for you to just understand the whole concept. So we're saying the PPC helps us to explain choice, opportunity cost, and scarcity. If you look at opportunity cost, we are simply saying opportunity cost is the value of an alternative that could have been taken but was not taken. Right. You look at, so when you talk about the PPC there, we need to first understand the definition. So the definition says a PPC is a curve that shows us a combination of two goods that can be produced in an economy if we are using our resources fully and efficiently. So if you look at the PPC there, always on your vertical axis and the horizontal axis, we put two goods, right? There's no price on the PPC. So it's always two products. But here we are making an assumption that the society is only producing two goods, right? But you know, in reality, that does not happen, right? So we make a simplifying assumption there so that what we are explaining can become easier. So any point that is, if you look at the slide there, any point that is on the PPC, we say that point is attainable and efficient. Right? What we mean by that is we are simply saying using the resources that we currently have or that the society has at that particular point in time. A society can either produce at point A, point B, point C, point G, E, or F. Right? But if you look at point A and point F, those are extreme points. You need to know that if we are at point F, it means the society is using all its resources only to produce one product, which is fish. Or if we are at point A, the society is using all its resources to produce potatoes, which is 100 kgs of potatoes. Right. So any point that is on the PPC is efficient and attainable because that is the best that the society can do with its resources. Then also, if you look at the shape of the PPC there, the shape of the PPC is concave, which is very important. If you go through your assignment there, you're going to see that you have been asked to draw your assignment using freehand. So that curve should come out, right? Because it is important. It explains the concept of opportunity cost that will be increasing as you go down the curve, right? So that is why it has to be concave. You cannot draw it as a straight line because it will not explain the concept that you want to draw. All right, so we also have points that are to the right of the PPC, like point G, for example. If we look at point G there, point G shows us scarcity because given the resources that we have, we cannot attain that point. Point G has more of fish and more of potatoes as well, but because our resources are limited, we cannot reach that point. Right. On the PPC, sometimes you can be asked, calculate the opportunity cost of moving, let's say, from point A to point E. Right. What is important is for you also to remember that if you are moving from point A to point E, what are we giving up? Right. What we are giving up is the opportunity cost. Because remember, opportunity cost is the value of the sacrifice. So if you are moving from point A, where we are producing 100 potatoes with nothing of fish there, to point E, it means that we have to sacrifice 60 kilograms of potatoes, which is the difference between 100 and 40 there. So if you say 100 minus 40, it is going to give you 60 kgs. That is the opportunity cost of moving from point A to point E. You can also be asked to move in the other direction. To say, what is the opportunity cost of moving from point F to point G? It means it is the 2 baskets of fish that we are sacrificing, the difference between 5 and 3. That is the opportunity cost. We also have points that will be inside the PPC, right? A point like point H, it can be put anywhere as long as it is inside the PPC. That point shows us attainable points. That point will be attainable, but it is inefficient because we could do better with our resources by moving outwards towards PPC. So it shows inefficient as well as unemployment. All right. You also notice that as we move, let's say we are moving down PPC from point A to point B, means we are sacrificing potatoes, we are taking away resources from the production of potatoes to the production of fish. So as you move down the curve, you're going to find that the opportunity cost will start to increase because our resources now, they become more specialized in the production of fish. Right? So we now need to sacrifice more potatoes for us to get additional fish baskets. Right? So that is increasing opportunity cost that you are going to find going down the curve. That is what also brings the idea of the concave shape of the PPC. All right. Are there any questions so far? Do you have any questions? All right. Hi, Linda. We'll talk about the assignment after I'm just done with the slides, so we can go back when we are discussing the assignment. All right. So just to summarize, they were saying all points that are on the PPC are attainable combinations, or any point that is inside the PPC, though it will be inefficient. Unattainable combinations, all points that are beyond the PPC, so any point that is to the right of the PPC shows unattainable combinations, which is scarcity. Efficient combinations are all points that lie on the PPC. Inefficient combinations or unemployment, all points that are inside the PPC. Then you can look at potential changes in the PPC. Right. So in the long run, things might change. All right. So you can have changes in the PPC in one of the goods, the production of one of the goods increasing or decreasing. So if you look at what is currently on the slides, you can see that the production of capital goods is increasing whilst the production of consumer goods remains the same. The reasons could be we have discovered new resources that are suited for the production of capital goods, or workers could become more skilled in the production of capital goods, or there's a net migration of skilled workers who are able to produce capital goods, or improvement in production techniques that suit the production of capital goods. But you can see here the production, the original PPC, there's the blue one, which is AB. So it is going to shift outwards to AC, which shows we are now producing more capital goods. Right. So that could also happen in terms of the other product, which is consumer goods. We can start producing more consumer goods whilst the production of capital goods remains the same. So again, the reasons could be as the ones I just gave before, but now there will be an increase in the production of consumer goods whilst capital goods production remains the same. So it is always important to know which one was your original PPC, which one becomes your new PPC, because that is what determines whether the production is increasing or it is decreasing. Right. So you can also have both goods changing. Right. So our original PPC is AB, then it shifts outwards to EF. What that simply means is we have an increase in the production of both goods, capital goods and consumer goods. But if you also notice, we are saying there our capital goods and our consumer goods are increasing. These are the goods that are representing all the goods that we are producing in the economy. So if you are asked to illustrate economic growth on the PPC, this is how you do it. You show a shift in both goods increasing. Right? It could be because of improved weather conditions, improved productivity, more resources have been discovered, and so on. So this is a situation in which both goods are increasing. Or it could go in the opposite direction. Also, what is important is to know which one was the original PPC, which one is now the new PPC. All right. Then it is important as we proceed to know the factors of production. Right. It is important to know the factors of production that are associated with production in an economy. Right. So we are saying there, you look at the factors of production, you need to be able to describe them. Natural resources, which are basically the free gifts of nature that we have, right? Things like forests, things like sunshine, things like the minerals, and so forth. So those are natural resources. When you use the natural resources, you need to use them carefully, otherwise they can become extinct. So these are some of the natural resources cannot be replaced. Almost all of them are irreplaceable. Right. Then you also need to remember the remuneration or the income that is associated with each. I'm sure you noticed that on your assignment as well. So when you look at natural resources, the remuneration is rent. Natural resources is sometimes called land. Then labor there, we're basically talking about the human, mental, and physical effort that goes into the production of goods and services. So if you look at that, we have the remuneration being salaries and wages. Right. Then you move on to capital. Right. We are talking about all man-made goods that we use in the production of other goods and services. The remuneration that is associated with that is interest. Then the last one, which is entrepreneurship. We're talking about the ability to combine all the other resources there to produce goods and services. So the reward or the income associated with entrepreneurship is profit. When you look at these natural resources, it is important to remember that both the quality and the quantity of these resources is important, because it is going to determine the quality and the quantity of the goods that you're also going to produce. All right. You also need to know, if you look at your assignment there, we have a section which asks about specialization and division of labor. Right. When you talk about division of labor there, we are simply saying that is when you break down production processes into smaller parts. Right. So when you divide the labor there, that can eventually lead to specialization, whereby you are saying each country or each firm specializes on activities that they have the lowest opportunity cost, right? Where they sacrifice the least. That is what they're going to be able to produce. And after that, if it is at country level, then trade can actually happen. We'll look at it maybe later on when we look at the foreign sector. Right. We look at the three central economic questions. So when you look at the three central economic questions, this is basically the question, the what, the how, and the for whom. So we are saying, what goods and services should we produce? This is also referred to as the output question. Then the second question is, how are we going to produce these goods and services, which is the input question. Are we going to use more labor and less capital? Are we going to use more capital and less labor? Either way, there are advantages and disadvantages. If you look at the advantage of using more labor, it means that you're going to reduce the level of unemployment in the economy. But the disadvantage is it is also a bit inefficient, right? You also look at if you use more capital, then you're going to achieve growth. You're going to be more efficient, right? In the long run, it can also become cheaper, right? But the disadvantage is unemployment is going to increase in the economy. We also need to look at the major spending units in the economy, right? Maybe before I go to that, we also look at the three major economic systems that we have. All right. So we have the traditional, the command, and the market economy. So when you look at these economic systems, it is important to see how each and every economic system address the three central economic questions. For instance, if you take the command system, right, what is produced is determined by the central authority. How it is going to be produced is also determined by the central authority. Right. And for who is going to get? Okay, the third question is, for whom are we producing for? Which is basically the distribution question. Who is going to get the goods and services that have been produced? So that is also determined by the state or the central authority. Right. Also, when you look at these market systems, it is important for you to remember the main characteristics of each. What are the advantages of each? What are the disadvantages? Then finally, the fourth economic system that we have is a mixed system, which combines the aspect of traditional, command, and market systems. So when you look at this one, that is the most common one in most countries because there is private ownership, as in market systems, but there's also government owning some of the resources. Like for example, in South Africa, we have parastatals that are owned by the government or controlled by the government. At the same time, we also have private businesses that are operating, that are privately owned. Right. We also look at the circular flow of income and spending. Right. When you look at the circular flow of income and spending, first we start by only having the households, which we assume the households own the factors of production. Then we have, in a two-sector model, we have the households and the firms. So that is the starting point. So always when you are discussing this circular flow, you start with the households because they are the owners of the factors of production, which they sell to the firms through the factor market. The firms are going to engage in the production process. Right. When they engage in the production process, they're going to produce goods and services, which they are going to sell to the households through the goods market. Then after that, you're going to find that when the households sell the factors of production, they're going to get an income in the form of salaries and wages, which is the same income that they're going to use to produce, to buy the goods and services produced by the firms. The firms are also going to get an income in the form of sales revenue. When we add, making it a three-sector model, when we add the government, what the government does is it collects tax from both the firms and the households, which is the tax that they're going to use to provide for public goods and services, your roads, the street lights, your public hospitals, military, and so forth. Then government also spends on the factor market, and we have people that are working for the government. You can also get capital from there. Then you also have government spending on the goods and services that have been produced by the firms. So that is this three-sector model there. Right. Then the fourth, so when we have firms, government, and households, we call it a closed economy, right? Because we do not have the foreign sector. Now, when you add the foreign sector, it becomes an open economy where we are now saying our consumption is now coming from the households, investment from the firms, government spending from the government. Then we add the foreign sector, which is basically the exports and imports. So exports, which are goods produced locally but consumed elsewhere. Imports, goods that are produced elsewhere but consumed locally. Right. So this is just a summary there. You know that your total spending is made up of consumption plus investment plus government spending plus X minus Z, which is your net exports. Our major flows are production, income, and spending. These flows happen at the same time, simultaneously. Whenever firms are producing and income is being earned, spending is also taking place. When you look at you also need to remember our leakages in the circular flow. So when you talk about a leakage, you are simply saying something that takes out income from the circular flow there, which is negative to the economy there. So you have taxes, you have savings, and you have imports. Then when you look at the injections, what brings in income into the circular flow, this is what is going to grow the economy. This is what is going to generate jobs. We have government spending, we have investment, and exports. Right? That is just a summary of those meta flows. All right. Then we move on to supply and demand. When you look at supply and demand, this is when maybe the real economics now starts. So when you look at supply and demand, it is important for you to know what are the determinants of demand. The difference between demand and quantity demanded. It is also important for you to be able to differentiate between a movement along the demand curve and the shift of the demand curve. We do the same analysis with supply. Okay? So when you look at the demand function, we can summarize it through that equation there. Remember, we can use words, we can use graphs, we can use equations, we can use tables to explain demand. So here, this equation says quantity demanded, which is QD, is a function of price of a specific good, price of related goods. When you talk about related goods, you're talking about the substitutes and your complement. The income of the consumer, taste and preferences, the number of the people in the household or the size of the population, those they represent, and other determinants that could influence demand. When you look at your demand, it is not possible for us to analyze all those determinants at once. So we use the ceteris paribus assumption, simply meaning that we hold all the other factors constant, or we hold them, we are saying they are not changing, all else being equal. That is what ceteris paribus means. For example, if you are going to look at the relationship between the quantity demanded and the price of the specific good, we hold the other factors such as price of related goods, income, aside. Because if those things are going to change, then we might not come up with a clear answer on the outcome. So what we need there is we analyze each and every determinant in isolation of the other determinants. So it simply means that we are holding the other determinants constant. So if you look at the price of the specific good, we are saying that the price of the specific good shows us the relationship or the law of demand. We say the higher the price, the higher the higher the price, the lower the quantity that is demanded, right? The higher the price, the lower the quantity that is demanded, holding all other things constant, which is basically the law of demand. So there's an inverse relationship there between the price of the product and the quantity that is demanded. When price increases, quantity demanded will decrease. When price decreases, quantity demanded will increase. Price of related goods and services, here we are now talking about substitutes or complements. So when you look at substitutes and complements, we want to see how two products that are related, how does it influence the demand for the other product. Let's say the price of tennis rackets increase. How does that affect the demand for tennis balls? Right? You're saying if the price, those products are complementary because we use them together. If the price of tennis rackets increases, it means we are now buying less tennis rackets, which is going to eventually influence the demand for the tennis ball. Right? Then you also products that are substitutes, the butter and margarine, a common example. The price of butter increases, means the demand for margarine is going to increase because people are now buying less butter and start buying margarine. But we are holding all other things constant. Then you look at the household income. When you look at the household income there, the assumption normally is we are saying the higher the income, the higher the demand. But this applies to goods that we refer to as normal goods. If we have certain goods that we refer to as inferior goods, if the price of those goods increase, then if the income increases, then people will start buying less of those. So we call them inferior goods. So with this one, the relationship now becomes an inverse or a negative relationship. But normally we assume that when income increases, demand should also increase. But that is for normal goods. Then we have taste and preferences of the consumer. When you look at the taste and preference of the consumer, there is something is fashionable, people are preferring it, then demand is obviously going to increase, holding all other things constant. The number of people in the household, the more the people that we have, or the population, the more the demand. That is why you find countries like China and India are able to produce more and sell more because they have very large populations. All right, then there are other possible determinants that you can come up with. All right. It is important to be able to distinguish between a movement along the demand curve and a shift of the demand curve. A movement along the curve is caused by a change in the price of a specific product. Let's say the price increases from A to B there. So our price will be on the vertical axis. Always, your price is on the vertical axis. Your quantity is on the horizontal axis. Let's say at point A, our price is 10 Rand. Then it increases maybe to 15 Rand. We are saying it is a change in the price of the specific product. We are moving on the same demand curve. That is a movement along the demand curve as a result of an increase in price. So it could be as a result of a decrease in price, then we'll be moving from point A to point A. The only determinant that causes that movement is the price of the specific product. All the other determinants, if they change, they are going to result in a shift of the demand. Right. So a shift is caused by any other variable other than the price of the product. Those variables are price of related goods, household's income, taste and preferences, the number of people that are in the household. A change in any of those factors is going to cause a shift in demand, which is a change in demand. When it's a movement, we talk about a change in quantity demanded. So it is important for you to be able to distinguish this, because in your examination, they can ask you about this, or they can ask you in the multiple choice or in the writing questions. So it is always important to understand. All right. Then again, we move on to supply. Again, we say our supply function there, quantity supplied is a function of price of the specific product, price of related goods, substitute and complements, price of the factors of production, expected future price, and the state of the technology, T1. So when you look at the state of the technology, what we are basically saying there is, when you look at the supply function, what we are saying there is a positive relationship between the quantity that is supplied and the price of the specific product. If the price increases, quantity supplied is also going to increase. It is also important to note that when you look at demand, we are looking at the economy from the consumption side. So demand is associated with consumption because it is the households that normally demand. But when you look at supply, we are now looking at the economy from the point of view of production. So here now you need to think like a producer. Right? What are you going to do if the price of the product increases? You are going to supply more because the goal of the producer is to make profit. Price of alternative goods, again we have substitutes and complements, but now in production. It's also important for you to note the difference that substitutes and complements under demand are different from substitutes and complements under supply. So it is important to take note of that. Price of the factors of production and other inputs. If the price of the factors of production increase, people start demanding higher salaries and wages. Price of machinery increases, means that supply is going to decrease because most firms are not going to be able to afford to continue producing, so they might eventually close. Supply decreases. Expected future price. So when you look at expected future price there, we are saying the expected future price determines the supply today. Right? If the producers expect the price of maybe a product like petrol to increase, supply might decrease in the short term. Then when the price has gone up, they will now supply more. Technology is also important. The better the technology that you are using, the more we are able to produce. All right. So we have the same analysis that we did with demand, the same analysis that we are also doing with supply. All right. Then it is also important to note the difference between the movement along the supply curve. The price of the specific product is the only one that results in a movement along the supply curve, which is a change in quantity supply. Any other determinant, such as the price of alternative goods, right, such as the price of alternative goods, price of the factors of production, expected future price and technology, if they change, then what happens there is you're going to have a shift in the supply curve. Rightward shift representing an increase in supply, leftward shift representing a decrease in supply. The same with demand. If demand shifts to the right, it means that demand is increasing. When it shifts to the left, then it is decreasing. So any decrease is to the left, any increase is to the right. Okay, when you put together supply and demand, we can now be able to determine prices. So here we talk about the invisible hand, right, according to Adam Smith. So when you talk about the invisible hand, we are simply saying it's a force that controls prices, but you cannot see it. What determines the fact that when you go to a shop, apples are going to be sold at 20 rand per kg? What that basically means is there are forces of supply, forces of demand that are determining those prices. So you have your upward sloping supply curve, downward sloping demand curve. We put them together, we come up with equilibrium. So when you talk about equilibrium, we're simply saying it's a state of rest, a state of balance, where the producers are happy, the consumers are happy. No one has any incentive to change. All right. So if we let's say we are at a price of 2 rand. At the price of 2 rand there, you can see that the quantity that is supplied is 50 units. But the quantity that is demanded, because it's a lower price, is going to be 320 units. So what happens there is, it means we have excess demand, right? There is excess demand in the economy. Quantity demanded is more because it's a lower price. The quantity that is supplied is less because it's a lower price. Producers are not able. So whenever we have excess demand, like at the price of 2 there, you can actually calculate the excess demand, which is basically the difference between 320 and 50. What that then means is price is going to increase. So those market forces, they are going to put an upward pressure on price. So as the price starts to increase, quantity demanded will start to decrease, whilst quantity supplied will start to increase until we meet at equilibrium price, which will be 5 rand. So that now we are saying the forces of demand and supply have stabilized the price. If you look at a price, let's say the price of tomatoes is now 7 rand. What that means is because it's a higher price, the consumers are going to demand less. So the consumers will only demand 120. But because it's a higher price, the suppliers are going to supply more. So they will supply 300 units. So we're going to have excess supply of 80 units, which is the difference between 300 and 120. So there is a market surplus. Whenever you have a market surplus, it is going to put a downward pressure on price. So as the price decreases, you're going to find that the quantity demanded is going to increase, whilst the quantity supplied will start to decrease. Eventually, we reach equilibrium. We are now in a state of rest. All right. So this is when the market forces are operating. But when government intervenes, it becomes a different ballgame, because now the market forces can no longer play their part because of the intervention that the government would have put. Let's say they institute a maximum price. So a maximum price is always put below equilibrium for it to be effective. But now, let's say they put a maximum price, the maximum price should be 2 rand. Now the market forces can no longer operate because this is a rule that the government has put in place. So now that is when we have shortages in the market. Now rationing comes, trying to allocate a few goods that have been produced. So the market mechanism will no longer apply whenever there's government intervention. Or government can also put a minimum price. Minimum prices are always put above equilibrium for them to be efficient or to be effective. But again, when that happens, the excess supply cannot be eliminated by the market forces. So that is when government also needs to come in and try and deal with that surplus. All right. Then we can have changes in demand. So when you talk about changes in demand, let's say if you are looking at this graph there, let's say the demand increases. Right. When demand increases, it is going to cause a rightward shift of the supply chain. When that happens, you're going to find that price will increase and quantity will also increase. Right. I will refer to the graphs as we discuss the assignment on changes in supply and demand. All right. So, are there any questions in regards to what we covered before we move on to the assignment? Hello, Bernard, I'm sorry about that. All right. Are there any questions in regards to the presentation or learning units that are covered in the assignment? Is there anyone with a question? Guys, are you there? All right. So can we move on to the assignment? Linda, you had a question sometime? All right, so look at it as we after. So you can check out your assignments. Do we all have our assignments with us? Yes, Alex. There will be a catch up on the portal. All right. Okay. Let's proceed and look at the assignment. So when you look at the assignment there, we are saying the important thing there is you're referencing, just following the instructions. So you read through the instructions, how you're supposed to type your assignment, you are supposed to put your student number, all those things that are just what given on the instructions there. So also important is you start your assignment early, because those people that pass the assignments are the people that start with it a bit early. If you do it in a rush, then you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Right. Also, use the referencing guide. Right. Use the referencing guide that is available on your portal to do your referencing. We do both in-text referencing as well as the list of references at the end. So it is important because you're going to lose a lot of marks if you don't reference properly. I'm sure you also saw it on the instruction. Whenever you draw graphs, your graphs must be fully labeled. That is very important. You need to be able to label your graphs, because if you don't do that, you're going to lose marks. You're just putting lines that you need to do. All right, let's move on to question 1 on the assignment. Right. So as we discuss the assignment, if you are not clear, just just put your question immediately. So question 1 there says define the following concepts and give an example of each. So there you are just defining, but do not forget to give an example, right? But also look at the mark allocation there. It is 3 marks. So you cannot write just one sentence there and expect to get 3 marks, right? You need to maybe 2 lines and give the example there, because 3 marks is a lot. So look at the mark allocation before you submit your assignment, so that you know you've put enough material. So microeconomics, where it is defined, you can see that on page 11. Public goods, you can see that on page 8. Positive statement, this is in your textbook. Positive statement, page 12. Ceteris paribus, page 11. Equilibrium, page 19. So there it is just straightforward. You define, then you give the example. Do not forget to give the example. Are there any questions on question 1? All right, thanks, Alex. Okay. All right, thank you, guys. Let's move on to question 2. The instruction on question 2 there says redraw the following PPC diagram by hand for country J and answer the questions that follow. So what you do there is, the question says by hand, right? What you do is you type your assignment, you leave a space to draw the graph, right? You drew a nice curve there, but remember there from the presentation I was saying, the concave shape of the PPC is very important, right? Because it helps us to explain the concept of opportunity cost, all right? And how division of labor also happens, specialization. All right, so make sure that you come up with a nice curve there. You label, you put the numbers there, the labeling. You are just copying what is there. All right. So you redraw using your hands. So that's an instruction that you need to follow. Then you move on to the questions. It says, using PPCAF, describe points A and F. Right. So what that question is requiring you to do there is, it is simply testing whether you know that at point A, we are only producing one product, which is shoes. And on point F, we are also only producing only one product, which is belts. So it means we are using all our resources to produce. Those are extreme points where we are using all our resources to produce only one product. Right. Question 2.2 says, using PPCAF, describe points D and C. Right. Remember from the presentation, we said any point that is inside the PPC. Alex, you still can't hear me? Alex? All right. Okay. Using PPCAF, describe points D and C. Right. From what we said, we said any point that is inside the PPC shows unemployment or inefficiency in the use of resources. Then any point that is beyond the PPC shows us scarcity of resources. So that is your answer for number 2 there. We look at number 3, says, using PPCAF, describe movement from A to B in terms of opportunity cost. Remember, opportunity cost is the value of the sacrifice, what we have given up. So you are starting from point A, moving on to point B. You calculate how much or how many shoes are we giving up for us to obtain that. So there we are saying opportunity cost is the value of making the sacrifice, or the cost of making the sacrifice. So how many shoes are we sacrificing? All right, that is for 2.3 then. Then for 2.4, from B to E, again the same concept. How many shoes are we sacrificing from point B going on to point E? All right. So again, you are describing the opportunity cost that you are incurring. Right. Then 2.5 says, use your answers to 2.3 and 2.4 to describe the nonlinear nature of the PPC. When you say the PPC is nonlinear, we are talking about the fact that it is concave and sharp. Right? Refer in your answer to specialization and division of labor. When you answer that question there, it is important to go through your learner guide on page 18 to 19. Right? If you have your learner guide there, page 18 to 19, that is where they discuss this. So when you look at this, you are saying from page 18 to 19, you are going to see why we are talking about the nonlinear nature of the PPC, which is it shows us increasing opportunity costs as we move down the PPC. You can even briefly describe what specialization is and what division of labor is, right? So that we are saying as we move down the PPC, as we sacrifice resources from the production of shoes to the production of belts, we are now going to find that the resources now become more suitable for the production of belts. So you find the opportunity cost will be increasing as we move down curve. So use your learner guide to answer that question there, page 18 to 19. You get a full explanation of what is required. All right, then we move on to 2.6. Describe a possible cause of the swing of PPCAF to PPCAG. You see there we have two PPCs. The first one there, then the second one where we have an increase in the production of belts. So what could be the cause? The causes are several. It could be we now discovered more resources that help us to produce belts. It could be improved the production techniques. It could be productivity. It could be workers have become more skilled in the production of belts, right? But the question says describe, right? Describe a possible cause. So you need to be able to describe them. Don't just say improve technique in the production of belts. You need to describe what that factor that is looking at. All right, Lindsay, it will be available very soon. Genevieve will upload it very soon. So you will have it. Are there any questions on question 2? Linda, you had a question? Two 2.6. All right. 2.6 said describe a possible cause of the swing of the PPC-AF to PPC-AG. Right. If you look at our diagram there, we have two PPC. So what could be the cause of the movement there? What could cause us to produce more belts? Right. So the difference are several there. Whatever you're going to describe, you need to describe, right? Not just list. So the possible reasons could be we have discovered more resources that assist us in the production of belts. We have improved production techniques specifically for the belt, or productivity in the belts manufacturing is increased, or workers have simply become more skilled in the production of the belts. So those are the possible reasons that you could give. All right. Then 2.7. All right. Thanks, Linda. All right. 2.7 says describe the outcome of the swing from PPC-AF to PPC-AG in terms of points B, E, and C. Right. So if you look at point B there, initially it was efficient, but now as we move to PPC-AG, it now becomes inefficient because it is now inside PPC-AG, right? So that is basically what we are answering there. If you look at E, all right, if you look at E and C, so point E, again, initially it was efficient, but now if you move to point AG, it goes inside the PPC, so it also becomes inefficient. Then now point C, which previously was unattainable, now lies on the PPC, so it becomes efficient and attainable. So are there any questions on question 2? Thank you, Linda. All right. Thanks, Bernardo. We move on to question 3. Question 3 says, again, the instruction there, redraw the following graph by hand and answer the questions that follow. Right, so make sure you redraw the graph and you label it. 3.1 says, describe the forces that would be set in motion if the market price was 50. So there, you know that you can see from the diagram that your equilibrium price is 30. So when the price is above equilibrium, what happens, right? So what you need to describe there is the whole process that happens whenever we have a surplus or excess supply in the market until we get to equilibrium. That is what you need to describe. Then you move on to 3.2. Describe the forces that will be set in motion if the market price was 10 Rand. Again, 10 Rand is below equilibrium. So there is a market surplus or excess demand. Now you describe the whole process that is going to happen until we reach equilibrium price, which is 30 Rand. Then 3.3 says, describe the outcome if a price ceiling was set at 50 Rand. Okay, describe the outcome if a price ceiling was set at 50 Rand. So, you know, a price ceiling, we are basically referring to a maximum price. So, when you talk about a maximum price there, we want to see whether it will have any effect or not. That is what the question is asking you to do there. Will it have any effect if it is put above equilibrium? Remember, the goal of a maximum price is to ensure that consumers are not exploited, to ensure that producers do not charge exorbitant prices. So that is how we are supposed to answer that one. Is it going to have any effect? 3.4, describe the outcome. Describe the outcome if the price ceiling was set at 10 Rand. So now it is below equilibrium. What is going to happen in the economy? What you need to remember when you are asking, when you are answering 3.4 there, the price ceiling is set below 10 Rand. Now the market forces of supply and demand, that invisible hand, is no longer applying here, because government has set a law that this tea should be sold at 10 Rand. So the market forces can no longer operate the way you have answered question 3.2. All right. So take note of the question of the difference there between 3.2 and 3.4. Right. On 3.4, that adjustment mechanism does not happen. Again, 3.5, describe the outcome if a price floor was set at 50 Rand. Okay. A price floor set at 50 Rand. All right. So we want to see what will happen there. Remember again, this 50 Rand is above equilibrium. So this is the minimum price. So when you talk about the minimum price there, now government has set a law. The market adjustment mechanism, the invisible end of supply and demand, will also not happen there, because now there is a law which says tea should be sold at 50 Rand. So that is how you answer there. We have excess supply, but the adjustment mechanism is not going to happen because of the price flow. Describe the outcome if 3.6. Describe the outcome if a price floor was set at 10 Rand. Remember, again, testing whether the price floor is going to have any effect in the market because it has been set below the equilibrium price. Then we move on to 3.7. Use your graph to illustrate and describe. So what that basically means is you are going to draw a graph which is fully labeled, 2 marks for that, and after that you need to describe what is happening on your graph. You cannot just draw a graph and leave it there because you're only going to get 2 marks. Use your graph to illustrate and describe what would happen to consumers' demand if the price of coffee, a substitute, decreases. Right, remember those are related goods. So here, what you need to remember is your graph is for tea. You're not drawing the graph for tea for coffee there. You're drawing the graph for tea. All right. So if the price of coffee decreases, obviously it means that people are going to buy more coffee and less tea. Alex, your graph, remember it's one graph. The graph that you are drawing is for tea, not for coffee. But what happens to tea is affected by what is happening to coffee. All right. So the price of coffee has decreased, which means that people are going to buy more coffee there and less of tea. So demand for tea is going to decrease, which is what you need to illustrate on your graph. If you go to page 84, B, figure B there, you're going to see what you're supposed to do. In the textbook, Amo, in the textbook, page 84. It's a pleasure, Linda. All right. So you show what was the original supply curve, what was the original demand curve. Then you show the shift. You put the arrows, right, showing that this is what is happening to price, this is what is happening to quantity. Then you describe what is on your graph. For you to get those 3 marks, you need to describe what. So the graph is simply aiding your explanation. So when you do your description, also refer to the points that are on the graph. Okay? Enika, you're typing something? All right. Okay, let's move on to 3.8. I'm sure Genevieve will answer your question as we proceed. 3.8, it says use the same graph to illustrate 2 marks again and to describe 3 marks. What would happen to supply if adverse weather affected tea crops? There, it is a decrease in supply that you need to illustrate. Then you give the explanation. The graph that you're supposed to draw there, you can find it on page 86B, figure B there. Remember, we said if it's an increase either in demand or supply, it's to the right. If it's a decrease, it's a shift to the left. Okay? Any questions on question 3? Any questions on question 3? I get your question there. you are just copying that graph there, right? You're just copying that graph, but you need, because you cannot show both of them on the same graph. All right. Decrease is a shift to the left. So when supply decreases, it is to the left. When demand decreases, it's also to the left. When it increases, it is to the right. Okay? Then, all right, for you to be able to illustrate that, use 3.7, draw it in isolation so that we see what happens there. You redraw the graph, then you show the change. Alex, you redraw the graph for 3.7, you show the change there. It looks like, to me, it looks like you need to draw two separate graphs there. You cannot illustrate that on the same graph. Yeah, use a separate graph there. The separate graphs, yes. Use the same graph. Yes, Alex. Looks like you can use the same graph, but now it says use the same graph to illustrate and describe what would happen if supply decreases. I think you should just need to redraw it and show the shift. That is what makes sense, because if you are going to show a simultaneous change, then that will be different. Just redraw the graph and show that, okay, so that it becomes clear. Yes, Alex. You redraw the graph as it is, then you show the shifts. Alex, are you answered now? Hello? Are you still there? Are you still there, guys? All right, all right. So you show the shift there in demand and in supply. All right. Then we move on to question 4. Right. Question 4, it says discuss South Africa's resource endowment under the following headings. Each section should contain a full description of the resource, remuneration for that resource, and plenty of South African facts. So the question there wants you to discuss. So when you are discussing, you're going to find the factors there on page 42 to 45 in your textbook. So you give a theoretical description, of the factors of production, entrepreneurship, what is it, capital, what is it, natural resources, what is it. Then after that, you go to remuneration, right, which is basically the incomes that are accrued to each. Then this is research, right? You need to show that you have done some research there. We have some websites that have been given for you there. You go to those websites there, you get the effects, you reference where you got that information from. But for you also to show that you have done research, also put some statistics there, right? Also put some statistics that show the numbers. Remember when you're discussing quality and quantity, but you're now putting it into South African context, right? That is how you can explain that. So it's in 3 parts there: full description of the resource, remuneration, and South African facts. So you're doing research about South Africa. All right. Any other question? Yes, John, the presentation has been recorded. What do you mean the images, Amo? What do you mean about the images? Yes, that is correct. All right, let's just, Prince, let's just go back to 3.7. Let's just go back to 3.7 there. Because on 3.8, I think I had overlooked that. It says use the same graph. All right, guys. On 3.8, I think I overlooked the fact that says use the same graph. So you are supposed to show on the same graph. My mistake there. You are supposed to show it on the same graph. So one graph, Alex, here right there. It says use the same graph. So one graph there. So the first one, you show the leftward shift in demand, then the second one, the leftward shift in supply. Yes, Alex. I think that is the correct thing there. One graph for question 3, yes. Because I had overlooked that it says use the same graph. So the first one, you show the leftward shift in demand, then the second one, the leftward shift in supply. All right, thanks for that, Alex. I think I had overlooked that one. You don't need to show how much it is going to decrease by, Prince. What you simply need to do is, what they require you to show is you need to show the leftward shift in demand. Then you put the arrows It doesn't matter whether the change is very small or it's very big. You just show the leftward shift. All right. So you go, the shift, how we are supposed to illustrate the shift there is, you can use the diagram that is on page 84, which shows the change in demand, right? But we need to show it on the same graph because the question says on the same graph. All right. All right. Let's go to 2.5. 2.5 says use your answers to 2.3 and 2.4 to describe the nonlinear nature of the PPC. Refer in your answer to specialization and division of labor. So when they say nonlinear nature there, when they say nonlinear nature, normally you can listen to the recording, then you are going to, you get the solutions to question 2. But let me go back to question 2.5. Right. You're going to get, if you go through your study guide on page 18 to 19, they talk about the nonlinear nature there, which is the concave shape of the PPC, which shows us increasing opportunity cost as we move down the PPC, which means that the workers are now becoming more specialized in the production of belts. Remember here, there's division of labor, some producing belts, some producing shoes. But now the workers become more specialized, the resources become more specialized in the production of belts as we move down the PPC. Hence, the opportunity cost starts to increase. Right? You're going to require more shoes, to sacrifice more shoes for you to get more belts because the resources are now specialized in the production of belts. But you get a clear explanation there, page 18 to 19 in your study guide. All right. Any other question, guys? Hello, any other question? All right, so remember there, guys, on the same graph, that's the instruction there. It says use the same graph. So we are doing it on the same graph. Thanks for that, Alex. Don't forget to reference your assignment both in text and at the end. Go consult your referencing guide, draw your graphs nicely, and start working on your assignments on time. Also, it is important to use this assignment as preparation for your test, for your examination, sorry, because the important thing is to understand the examination will be 80%, so we need to prepare for the examination, right? Remember, economics is a subject that you need to understand, so don't wait for the last minute for you to start preparing for the examination. All right, thanks, Alex. Yeah, we have another session in preparation for the examination. All right. So, guys, one thing I think on the graphs that I referred you to, right? On the graphs that I referred to you to, the B there is just showing the shift in demand, right? But if you are going to show them on the same graph, right? If you are going to show them on the same graph, the graph that you need to show would be like the graph that is on page 88, because you are showing all the shifts. Guys, let's go to page 88 in our textbook. Page 88 in our textbook. How it will end up looking, because we are showing both the change in demand and the change in supply on the same graph, it will end up looking like the graphs that are on page 88. Alright guys, do you see what I'm talking about? Alright, thanks John. Alright, because we are showing it on the same graph, we are not showing them separately. Okay, so they will end up looking like that. Then you just need to explain that demand is decreasing, which is leftward shift, supply is decreasing, which is also leftward shift, but on the same graph like that. Any question, guys? Is it clear on that question there? All right. Okay, guys. All right. All the best with the assignment. All right. Sure.